Evening, everybody, on this wonderful, crisp day. I'm from Delhi and I'm really enjoying the crispness of the air and the freshness of the air here. I'm delighted actually to be on a program or an evening where I have a person I have worked with and seen his work for a number of years, somebody whose wonderful thinking, conceptual mind I admire very much. Satish Gupta on my right, and I also have on my left the two lovely publishers of Full Circle who've done the book Zen Whispers. I said two because it's really a mother-daughter duo team which is doing these wonderful publications. Unfortunately, Priyanka had to run away because of some deep personal reasons, but I'm very happy that Poonam is here. Thank you for being here. While I'm speaking, you can see some beautiful work of Satish Gupta. I can see it on the monitor here, and you can see it right there. Just to give you a taster of the kind of work he does, it's a little film which is showing you the process of his work. Now, Satish has so much to his credit that I may not remember everything, so I do have a few notes here, so bear with me while I'm reading. I would actually love to just speak extempore about him, but since it's such a special day, I do want to ensure that I hope I don't leave the important things out. Satish is actually a kalakar, or an artist in what the traditional Indian way was, when an artist was a poet, a writer, a dancer, a musician. And that is how a kalakar or a chitrakar or in the old chitrashalas were really defined. And that is how, when you look at the story between Sage Markande and the King Vajra in the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, that is how it is, the interrelationship between the plastic and the performing arts. And you will see that with Satish and his work here. Satish is basically an artist who writes poetry, and that is why we have his book of poems and prose being released today. He's a painter, a sculptor, poet, writer, printmaker, muralist, designer, and a calligrapher. So my God, that's quite a lot, Satish. I don't know how you do it, but definitely there is a deep organic chemistry in the way he works. And more than Zen and more than the spiritual mysticism which is imbued in his works, there is a kind of an Advaitness in his entire work, because there is no duality in the work, neither in his thinking nor in his work practice. So as a person who's actually just introducing Satish, I think I've spoken much too much, and I'd just like to bring Satish into the conversation. I've been seeing a lot of his work for the last at least the 10 years. And what I see is, from the very evocative, simple, minimalistic brushstrokes that he uses, and you will see him actually performing and doing an enactment of his artwork a little later in the program. What is very interesting for me is the easy way he moves from a two-dimensionality of a paper surface, canvas, and to these large monumental sculptors and sculptures that you have seen in the film. I want to ask you, Satish, how do you do this? It's not that just because he studied the Beaux-Arts in Paris and he's been working and living in India, traveling the world, looking at large works, looking at the works of major public artists as well. I want to ask you that how is it that you bridge the gap between the two dimensions and the three dimensions?
You know, Alka,
Just take it, put it close to you.
I feel that, all life is one, and
You may have to speak louder.
yeah, Okay, that's difficult for me, but I'll try. I feel that really all life is one, and we are constantly separating ourselves from everything else. And if we stop doing that, I think life can be enjoyed and understood and experienced on a much, much deeper level. I think we're always constantly trying to build barriers. We start judging. The moment we get up in the morning, we feel, is it a good day? Is it a bad day? Is the sun out? Is it going to rain? Um, I didn't get my cup of tea. There was not enough sugar, or there was too much sugar. So we start our day with judging. And I think if we can just switch off and say, okay, today I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not going to judge anything. I think it can really make a big, big difference. So what I started doing, and I feel I was a painter for a very, very long time. I never sculpted. I'm an accidental sculptor, by the way. I just happened to sculpt because I'd broken my arm and I couldn't paint, and that's another story. But I started sculpting, and I was a painter for most of my life. And then people were asking me, are you a painter? Have you given up painting? Are you a sculptor? And I said, no, I don't see any duality. And I combined the sculpture and painting, also the micro and the macro. So there's a lot of like a repetition of a mantra in my works. It's like I feel that there are cells in our bodies which are is the matrix, and the larger image is the great cosmos. So these things are always happening in my work. I'm bridging all the barriers.
Coming back to barriers, I want to really go back at what you call the Indian Saundarya Shastra, because as we go into a more global, cosmopolitan way, art is becoming more political, it's more about society, it's more about thoughts, and it's being, the whole thing is about the politics of art and identity. But your work emerges really from the principles of the traditional Indian aesthetics, which we call Saundarya Shastra. So I go back to the Rasa theory, actually, which is embedded in the Natya Shastra, where you have very, very specific kind of the Ras Bhav, the Chintan, where the artist is a sadhak, and the whole thing becomes the gesture of the divine. And the latest work that you've done now is the Lingo Bhairavi, which is going to be shown as a procession, if I remember correctly, at Sadhguru's ashram at Mahashivratri on the 13th. So I'm just trying to ask you that, you were talking of bridging the gap. Now, there are different philosophies. You're talking of the Lotus Sutra at one end, and there you are looking at the Shiva Shakti on the other. So how does your journey from the Indian aesthetics of Ras and Bhav, which transcends everything, how are you transcending different philosophical thoughts in your work, from the Lotus Sutra of the Buddhist thought to the Shaiv Agam texts of the Lingo Bhairavi?
Somebody asked me, you're doing all these things, and what is the social relevance to your work? And right now, it's all politics, and it has to be something current, it has to be something. And I've constantly, I just replied to him, I said, maybe it's not socially conscious, but it's universally conscious. And that's what my work is about. It's about bridging the time, the space, everything. For me, it doesn't exist. All these barriers don't exist. And I feel a work of art has to be relevant for infinity. It has to be relevant through different time periods. It's not a news documentary that I'm making. So I go back to the Natya Shastra, all our Indian aesthetics, the canons of the sculpture. I've studied very deeply the Chola bronzes, what are the traditional proportions, but I break all the rules. And I think that's where the beauty is, to first understand what the tradition was, and then to take it forward in a contemporary way. So I've done that with all my sculptures. I'm making totally, I'm not using the lost wax process, though I've used it in some smaller forms, but I've gone beyond that to take it on to another level, to take it to a different scale.
So it's a lot to do with transcendence. And I think a lot of the transcendence of space, time is seen in your poems, which I would now request Poonam, the publisher of the book called Zen Whispers. And the thing is that she would probably give a taste of, 1847. So she'll give actually a flavor of the book which is going to be released right now. These are almost like haikus, and I'd really love Poonam to read a few of them.
These are some of Satish's favorite haikus. The first one goes like, "You are welcome to your mansions and palaces. The empty sky belongs to me." And the next one goes, "Through the mist snow-clad mountains, catching a glimpse of me." And then yet another one, "Water flowing, no time to pass judgments on uneven boulders." And the next one, "Does the wave before dissolving on the shore question its destiny?" And another beautiful one, "Each person's silence is unique, just like their voice." And I'll read the last one, "Be still, mind, let the dervishes whirl."
So these beautiful short poems are a reflection of what Satish is thinking, and as he's creating his absolutely magnificent, wonderful creations. I'd like him now to read one of his favorite poems, which we wanted him. It's actually a passage from the book, and I'd request him to read this. You want me to hold it?
Yeah, no, I'll hold it. Yeah. It's called The Milky Way. It's about a very intense experience I had, which I have put down in a very short form. My family used to sleep in an open courtyard on charpoys, simple cots made with bamboo and hemp, while gazing at the stars above in my ancestral home in the heart of Delhi. The fragrance of jasmine would be ever present, and sometimes the white cactus flower would open its magical petals to blossom through the night, only to shrivel back into itself with the first ray of sunshine. The air was unpolluted, and you could still be one with the elements, though often in the middle of the night it would start raining, and my siblings and I would quickly move our cots to the shelter of the veranda, cursing the rain gods in the broken sleep. My mother, strong, determined, loving, and protective, would use the hose to wet the floor and our bed sheets to keep us cool in the summer heat. The pedestal fan would lullaby us to sleep with its whirring rhythm. She would tell us mythological stories about various gods and goddesses and their celestial battles. Though she wasn't knowledgeable about astronomy, her simple tales made me wonder about the cosmos and our insignificant place in it. When she passed away, there were hundreds of well-wishers who gathered at our home. 4 of the male members of the family carried her body on a cot over our heads, as is the Indian tradition. It was the month of June, and the temperatures were soaring. One of the 4, I was under the shade of the cot. She was still protecting me from the blistering sun, I felt. At a funeral pyre, a strong flame in the gust of wind singed my face. Was it her last kiss? The next night, we went to the cemetery to collect the ashes when they had cooled. We washed the bones in milk to sieve the ash away from the bones, to save even the tiniest bit of bits to immerse them in the Ganges the next day. I was bare-chested while performing this ritual with my brothers. On that dark night, the tiny sparkling flecks of our charred bones, wet from milk, clung to my body and glistened in the moonlight, like millions of stars in the Milky Way, which spiraled ceaselessly above me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very evocative and moving text. Now I'm going to request Satish to show a bit of his magic. As I read the last of his Zen whispers, I'm going to request Satish to show the minimal way in which he works. The master said, I haven't yet learned to count beyond one. At two, duality starts, problems begin. He wants me to repeat the poem, so I will. The master said, I haven't yet learned to count beyond one. At two, duality starts, problems begin. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. The starkness of the black against the whiteness of the canvas, it's really stunning. Thank you very much. So we should have the book now? Yeah.
Sherida, will you join us on stage? Sherida is the designer of the book Zen Whispers, which you will find at the bookstore.
So since both the writer and the publisher are reluctant, I think I can really say that please do see the book. Whether you buy it or not, that is entirely up to you. But have a look and feel, and the haptic, the touch. It's really a beautiful book. Thank you. Thank you, Shalda, for the lovely design as well. Thank you very much.